Hey, so I wasn't. I've talked for over 10 minutes, and I didn't know that my microphone was off. Yeah. So good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us on Today's the Chat with Pilato. So yeah. So this episode today we're discussing sexual harassment and violence at the workplace. Like I said when you're not listening, like previously, we've had reports of people being slapped and beaten at their workplaces. We've had reports of sexual harassment in people's workplaces. And today we want to take time to discuss this topic. And to do so, I am joined by Madam Naomi Kimbala, who will help me discuss these issues and allow as many of you, our viewers, to participate by asking questions and sharing into what in the conversation. So, welcome, Madam Kimbala. Your microphone is as mute as mine. Yeah, I think your microphone is fine. I can't seem to get you. Okay, let me do this. Yes, so we will be joined by Madam Naomi Kenton. We're just sorting out the audio sound. Is it audio and sound? What's the difference? She's just sorting out a sound and we'll be joined. So, like I said, our topic for this evening is sexual harassment and violence at the workplace. We have had reports of people being slapped. Kunchit. Oh, but boss, we have reports of bosses making advances on their workers. And this evening we want to get in details. We want to discuss. We want to first of all unpack what is it that should be expected at the workplace. What Madam Naomi. Yeah, so we want to discuss what is it that people should expect in their workplace. Is it normal for your boss to slap you? Is it normal? I'll tell you a story. I was working for some company in Dola, and my boss was a kung fu master, big man. And one day, he slapped me. Bah! So by accident, I hit him back also. And he fired me instantly. And after firing me, I went to the labor office, and they told him, if you fire this guy, you withdraw your permit because you beat him. You're not supposed to beat your people, your employees. That's how I got my job. So what should be expected from your workplace? Okay, so we're still trying to get confirm, huh? What should be expected from your work? Is it normal for your boss to slap you? Is it normal for your boss to talk to you in a sexual manner or in a way that makes you uncomfortable? So this plus many more we'll be discussing with Madam Naomi Lunat Kimbala, who is gender director at ZCTU, and she will talk to us on what should be expected, what is not normal, and what to do in the event that you found yourself in an awkward situation with your boss. Let me try her. Hello. Okay, I think she's still. Yeah, so for those of you that have had an experience with violence and harassment at your workplace, you can start by sharing your stories. You can start calling in. You can start, and then we can get advice from Miss Kimbala. For those of you that, yes, Jeremiah, I slapped him back by mistake. So, and he fired me. Yeah, so let's get interactive as we wait for Miss Kimbala to join us with the audio, with the sound. Let's get interactive. Comments, share your stories, share your reality, and then we will pick it up. We will share. If you are at a moment where your boss slapped you or made some uncomfortable moves on you, would like to hear what the specialist says or thinks. We want to understand what is violence, what is sexual harassment at the workplace, what is normal, what is not normal. Like I said, I slapped him back by mistake, and he fired me, and I got reinstated by the labor office. Let's try. Let's. Yes, we are still trying to sort out sound with my guest, and we will do everything that we can to make sure that we have this discussion, because we understand that labor issues and the relationship, the most uh, delicate relationship is the boss worker relationship. So we have issues of sexual harassment. We've read and seen issues of sexual harassment at the workplaces. And these workplaces, it's not just Kuma industries or Kuma shopping mall, Kuma shops. This also happens with the domestic workers. We want to understand what is it that should be expected. If I have a female helper at home as a boss, do I have rights to do anything as I want to her body or to her? That's a discussion we want to get into today. And like I said, if you have an experience or you know somebody that is going through this, you can join us by commenting and by obviously asking a question or getting clearance on some things that you're not clear about. Yala is the sound. Yala is the sound. So this one is saying, friends, what is victimization? It's very important for people to be able to stand up for their rights or help others to do so without being treated badly in return. But sometimes we people don't speak out because we worry about retaliation. This could mean losing their job, being bullied, or being refused service. That's why me personally, I deal with such characters who victimize people. What is victimization? When we talk about a person being victimized, it means they are being, yep, took a message. Very true. So what Mr. Mwape is saying is, if you see a colleague being harassed or being abused by anyone, especially your superiors at your workplace, instead of just being a spectator, speak up, defend that particular friend of yours, because in the end, that becomes culture. Bridget Kayunga says sexual harassment is more common in workplaces. Yes, it is. That's why we want to have this discussed this evening. Sexual harassment. What is sexual harassment? Is it normal that since you've been given a job, you have no rights over your body, or your boss has unlimited power over you? They can do anything they want. Is that what should be expected? Is that normal? That's what this discussion is about. My experience with Chinese, which soon to be in the must. Okay, that's Mr. Moape Mwelwa. Mr. Jeremiah Blawayo, I like your name, sir. I like the name Blawayo. Mr. Jeremiah Blawayo says, personally, I think it's not just normal for anyone to slap you, but sometimes mistakes are just too explicit from some of the workers. So, kumumamo. On sexual harassment, this usually births from the way sometimes our sisters dress up. What we need to understand is that men's items are also live to react. I don't think I agree with Mr. Jeremiah Blawayo, but I would like to hear from you, the people that are listening. This is what Mr. Blawayo thinks. What is your reaction? Is there a moment where sexual harassment is justified? Is there a moment where violence at the workplace is justified? Are there moments when you can say, oh yeah, okay, now this is you've done, since you've done this, you deserve this? I want a reaction from you that are watching us this evening, so then we can get in details and understand if there are moments when sexual harassment is justified, or when violence is justified at a workplace. That is Mr. Jeremiah's position. I want to hear what others think about this position. Simple Ankadu says, I'm happy bringing such topics on the media. Yes, no, for us, we talk about everything. We talk about everything. I want somebody to argue or disagree with Mr. Jeremiah. Sima says, this thing is very common here in Zambia. This thing of violence and sexual harassment at the workplace. Sima says this is very common in Zambia. Should we accept it as normal just because it's common in Zambia? Should we say we are helpless? This is how we want to run our country, we want to run our society? Ahmed says sexual harassment cannot be justified. Sexual harassment cannot be justified. Mr. Jeremiah said on sexual harassment, this usually based from the way sometimes our sisters dress up. But Sima says it cannot be justified. Okay, it cannot be justified. I want to get as many contributions as possible because I want to understand your reality, but also we can allow ourselves to get to the bottom of this discussion. I'll be joined by Madam Naomi from ZCTU, whose work is around gender and how gender relates itself in the workplace. Bashim Pundu says, what can a man do if a female boss forces him to sleep with him? Eh? So what Bashim Pundu is saying, what if it's a female boss that forces a junior male staffer to sleep with her? That is a good question, and I would like to get as many reactions as possible, because sexual harassment does not just mean that it's one-way traffic. It also happens the other way, and that's what I would want for us to have a conversation on. Is it normal? Should it be normal for bosses to do what they are doing to their workers? Bridget Kayunga says, well, Jeremiah, under normal circumstances, there's no moment when sexual harassment is justified. When it comes to dressing, mostly the dress code is given, well catered for under the disciplinary code. Bridget Kayunga disagrees with what Jeremiah says. But Jeremiah, there's no moment when sexual harassment is justified. I also do not think that there's a moment where sexual harassment should be justified. Why should we be concerned with the dress code and not the mindset of the person that thinks that anyone that appears deserves some harassment of some sort? This is Mike Promise Kazungo, who says, I think women should know the importance of their bodies. For the boss to have that easy go on you, then he has seen a green light in her. Same applies to men if the female boss does that. Mike Promise thinks that you should know the importance of your bodies. If the boss does this, then it's because of what you've done. I don't agree with Mike. And anyone that disagrees or agrees with him, please, let's share your comments. We want to hear you. We want to have an understanding of what this looks like from your experience and from where you are. Gender-based violence and violence in the workplace and sexual harassment. What is happening? What should be done? So as we share, as we argue and disagree with each other and agree with each other, I want to hear people's thoughts. What should be done in the event that this is happening? And like I said, Madam Naomi will come and join us soon. But I want us to have this conversation. What should be done? What should be done? Fat J says sexual harassment is very common in companies that are based in Lusaka. Yeah, that's his opinion. Shadrach Kundachenga says sexual harassment is rampant and fastest growing in Africa. Among these is Zambia at large. Though, no matter how common it can be, sexual harassment, law is law. Where there is no law, the law should be in mindset. Thank you very much, Mr. Shadrach. So let's get as many contributions as possible. We also want to see what solutions should be. And if somebody was to find themselves in that situation, what should we do? Madam Naomi is here, but I want to read one more comment and then Felix Naliti says, for how long does it take for a woman be in frigidity state? Could be the same state which makes some women to behave in an acceptable manner. I don't know what that means. But if somebody knows what that means, please do add your voice. Yay! Madam Kimbala, how are you? I still can't hear you. I still can't hear you. Ah. This conversation must happen. This Voida says, I personally think your microphone is now working. Switch off one device. I think disconnect the first one, the one that was not working. I think this one is working.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yes, perfect. Good evening, Madam Naomi Kimbala. We are happy to have you, and we've kickstarted the conversation. I want to take your attention to some of the comments, and then we go to the questions that we prepared. So first of all, probably before we go to this, I want you to tell us about your work and the organization that you work for, and then we can get to the questions that we have and what the questions that the people are asking.
Hello?
I've lost you. Yeah, I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Okay, technology issues. So maybe just for the sake of moving forward, maybe my voice can just suffice for now.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, sure.
So you can tell us a little bit about your work and the organization that you work with. What is it that they do? And in this case, what is it that that we should do about the situation?
Okay, thank you so much, and apologies for the technology glitches. I don't know if you want to do something for has to happen. Okay, so I in Zambia, and for us, we are mandated situations of service, human rights are protected at the workplace. Again, for us to be relevant to our members, we need to make sure that we are relevant not only at the workplace, but also in the society. So our programming as trade unions has to touch the worker, not only at the place of work, but also make the worker relevant through our programs in the society.
Thank you very much. So I want to get to one comment by Jeremiah.
Issues.
Yeah. I want to get
Can
to
you
one
get me
question
now?
to Jeremiah. Sorry, I can't hear you. But let me get to one question from Jeremiah, which is very provoking, and I would like us to build a conversation from there. I hope you'll be able to see it. So Jeremiah Blawayo, are you able to see the question or the comment file from Jeremiah? Jeremiah, hello?
Hello?
Are you able to see the question that is on the screen?
Maybe if you can just read it for me because I'm actually using my handset because I think the audio is
Okay,
not so
okay.
good. So,
All right. So what Jeremiah Bulawayo says, personally, I think it's not just normal for anyone to slap you, but sometimes mistakes are just too explicit from some of the workers. So kumumamo, meaning it's to beat them. Secondly, on sexual harassment, it says this is usually birthed from the way sometimes our sisters dress up. But we need to understand what we need to understand is that men's items are so live to react. I would like to hear your reactions to that, and then we get to the questions that I prepared for this program.
okay, that's a very fantastic question. And, unfortunately, when it comes to gender issues, it's always good to do due diligence to the topic before we start getting into it, because currently the
Mm,
perception on gender is based on how we deem women in society. And when you look at how people are looking at gender equality issues, there's this big misconception that gender equality is only talking about issues of women's rights, or
yes, yes.
it's talking about women trying to get into the male space. Okay, so that is why it's very important that every time we sit down to talk about issues of gender, we first of all make it very clear that gender equality or gender is not a women's issue. Gender equality is a societal issue, it's an economic issue. Gender equality affects everybody. So most of the time, we want to get into these discussions without really grasping the real meaning of what gender is. And, because we don't understand what it is and we have not sat down, or maybe our programming or the way we have learned gender issues has made us feel that every time somebody talks about gender, they want to take a privilege from somebody.
Mm,
So you notice that every time somebody talks about gender without, you know, demystifying what gender equality is, you find that people get on the defenses. Gender
okay,
issues
thank you very
are
much.
sensitive
Yeah.
issues because they usually talk much.
Mm.
Yeah, they
So first, let's get to the questions that I prepared for this conversation, and then we'll get to these comments. I'm sure there are so many of these questions that needs to be addressed. So the first one I wanted to find out is the International Labor Organization's uh, convention on 190. Okay, let me say that. What is the International Labor Organization's Convention 190, and why is it important for countries like Zambia? Hello. Hello? I think we've lost Madam Naomi. We've lost her.
hello.
Yes, we've gotten you. We thought we had lost you. I wanted to find out
Hello.
what. Hello, I can hear you. I can hear you. Can you
Okay.
hear me? Hello? The network is bad.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you. I
Hello?
wanted to find out. Yes, Madam Kimbala, I wanted to find out what is the importance of the
Okay.
International Labor Organization's Convention 190? Why is C 190 very important
Okay.
for a country like Zambia?
Okay. So I didn't finish what I was saying. So look, Pilato, before we even get into talking about these gender issues, let us
Yes,
understand what gender equality is and what violence and harassment is.
yes,
Without
yes.
us really talking about this issue, demystifying this issue, you find that people are going to take, gender issues are very sensitive. And without really demystifying what they are or explaining to people what they really are, you find
Mm,
that people get guarded because gender actually touches on very sensitive issues, things that we hold.
mm. Hello? I think we've lost her. Um, so as we wait to connect with Madam Naomi, Nicholas Shamfuti says, in most companies belonging to Zambians, especially those that belong to well-connected people like in government, chiefs or political parties are in this behavior of wanting to use ladies for promotions, money, and other favors. But when a lady turns down that offer, she will be threatened of being fired. And when she complains to authorities like labor office, the authority will act against the person who complained to corruption. So corruption at labor office is high, and that has left a lot of ABCD. So what Nicholas is saying, in most companies belonging to Zambians, especially those that belong to, yes, I think we have you now. Is your sound okay now?
Can you hear me now?
I want to hear your voice. Yes, good.
You can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. I can hear you now.
Okay. I think now it's like the tables have been reversed. You can hear me, but I can't really I can't hear you.
Serious? Okay. So if you can't hear me, just respond to that question that, let me put this question here. So if you can respond to this question, we are good. In most companies belonging to Zambians, especially those that belong
Hello?
to well-to, hello? Oh, shame. Nicholas Shamfuti raises a very critical issue that I think most women and men will relate to. And Nicholas says, in most companies belonging to Zambians, especially those that belong to well-to-do, to well-connected people like in government, chiefs, and political parties are in this behavior of wanting to use ladies for promotions, money, and other favors. But when a lady turns down that offer, she'll be threatened of being fired. And when she complains to authorities like labor offices, but the authority will act against the person who complained. So corruption at the labor office is high, and that has left a lot of dash 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 dash. What? How many people? How many of us agree to this thought by Nicholas? How many people can say yes, this is true, and what should be done about the situation? Rose Mukobe Mumba. I think Rose is my friend somewhere. Rose says the ratification of the C-190 is a must in our country, and the Labor Office needs to ensure that it is not just for show. Yes, Rose says the ratification of Convention 190 is a must in our country, and the Labor Office needs to ensure that it is not just for show. Thank you very much, Rose, for coming through. I know you're my friend. If you're not my friend, you're supposed to be my friend. Start working at becoming my friend very soon. Uh, Chungu Emmanuel. Chungu Emmanuel says, sexual harassment is rampant and fastest growing in Africa. Among these is Zambia at large. Though no matter how common it can be, sexual harassment, law is law. Where there is no law, the law should be in the mindset. I think I read this one earlier. Yeah, I want to get as many as possible, as many contributions as possible, because I'm sure this is an issue that so many of us relate with, and we can relate to this. And Fat Dre says, create environments that encourage honest feedback and talk openly with co-workers about what constitutes acceptable behavior. I think that should be a solution, Brother Pilato. Yeah, I agree with you, Fat Dre. We need to have environments that allow for reporting and promotion of dignity for those that work in these spaces. Are we good?
I'm back. I hope you can hear me now.
I think this is better. I can hear you now. I can hear you clearly.
Okay. Oh, wow. Great.
Yes. So let's get the conversation started.
Yeah.
I asked a question about the International Labor Organization's Convention 190. Why do you think it's important for a country like Zambia?
Yeah. So if you can just indulge me just to say just to spend 1 minute to talk about issues of gender, because I feel that we cannot do due diligence to the topic at hand until we talk about what gender is and how we accept it as Zambians. And in this case, I don't want to talk about any other country. I just want to talk about our situation and our context as Zambians. Okay?
Sure.
So the first thing that I want to say is that gender issues are very sensitive. And without having the correct skill set to talk about gender issues, people usually do misunderstand what we are trying to bring about, because gender issues speak to things which we hold very close to our hearts. They touch on issues of sexuality, okay, partners, relationships. So it's very important that we do due diligence to what this discussion is about, because even when I was having connectivity problems, I could read even from the comments that the current situation, most of us as Zambians do not understand what gender equality is.
Very true.
Okay. So yeah, so gender equality is not about women taking over men's spaces. It's not about women trying to get anything away from men. Gender equality it touches on all of us as Zambians. In fact, gender equality is the 18 million population. It's the 18 Zambians in the country, because gender is just not women. Gender is both men and women. Yeah, so it's very important that we understand what gender equality is and what it seeks to gain, or what it seeks to achieve in our country. So the economists say that you cannot achieve economic development without equality. And in this case, when we're talking about the world of work, we are talking about equal opportunities and equal treatment. Okay? Yeah, so I'll just get into the question that you've asked. So in 2019, the tripartite partners, and in this case, the tripartite partners are the employers, the employer federations, the worker federations, meaning us as the CTU, and the government. They do convene every year at a convention, or at a platform called the International Labor Conference. So this conference seeks to come up with international laws which will make the world of work decent. Okay? So there had been an outcry from all the ILO member states about issues of violence and harassment in the world of work. So in 2019, there was an international labor standard which seeks to eliminate all forms, and in this case, all forms of violence and harassment in the world of work. So this is the convention that we're talking about. It was adopted in 2019. But you know, the thing with the convention, you cannot ratify it automatically. The government has to ratify it first through a certain process, after which it has to be domesticated through national law and practice. So yes, there's a convention which wants to kick out all forms of gender-based violence in the world of work. Yeah. Not just cases of sexual misconduct, because people sometimes, you know, people, when they're talking about gender-based violence in the world of work, they want to talk about sexual harassment. It's not that.
Yeah.
Anything that deters productivity, anything that deters or prevents somebody from being productive is harassment. Okay, it's just not sexual misconduct. There are a lot of forms of you know, this time there are a lot of acceptable practices which are going on in the workplace. I think you did mention one that somebody slapped you, and you see, without having the correct information, people see this practice as acceptable. But you know, the workplace has to be dignified. It has to be decent. Remember, work is a noble cause. Zambia cannot be what it is without the nobility of work, because through goods and services, we, the workers, in whichever place that you can call us, whether you're in the market, whether even what you're doing now, we are workers and we are driving the economy. So whichever platform, whichever space you are in, that place has to be decent. It has to be dignified. Okay? So currently, there are a number of practices which are deemed acceptable, but they are not acceptable. So this convention seeks to save the nobility of work. It seeks to make the workplace decent, because if there's a decent workplace, then there will be so much productivity. Not so.
Yeah, very true.
And Zambia will be more. It will prosper.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So, madam, I wanted to find out. So, when we talk about violence or harassment, what are these? How many types of violences are there? What qualifies to be harassment? Is it just physical harassment? Is it just physical violence? What is it? What qualifies to be termed as violence? In this case, if I went to my office today or tomorrow, what is it that I should consider violence? What is it that I should consider harassment?
Okay. So when you look at our Anti-GBV Act of 2011, it does state the type of harassment or violence that can occur. But when you look at the convention, anything that is not acceptable to your humanity, to your being as a human being, is violence and harassment. Anything that makes you not want to go to work, whether it is physical, whether it is emotional, is violence and harassment. It shouldn't even be somebody has to slap you. It can even be an insult. Okay? So anything that makes you feel uncomfortable in the workplace is harassment. Yeah. I don't need to go to any forms, because I think most of us have undergone verbal sometimes physical. And because it is not dotted in the policies, or it's not mentioned in the conditions of service, people are getting away with these vices. So that is what the convention is seeking to cure.
So now, knowing that you and ZCTU work closely with the people that are working in these different spaces, what would you say are the challenges faced by the people in these establishments, in the labor force? What are some of the challenges that you feel that they are facing in relation to what we're discussing today?
I'm telling you, right now we did our We did our gender audit. We did visit our affiliates. The CTU doesn't have members, it does have affiliates. And currently we have 54 unions in different sectors, both in private and public. And I tell you, we did our gender audit. And if I had to tell you what is going on in some of these workplaces, I tell you, you would cry. You would cry. There are so many unacceptable things. There are so many unacceptable practices that people are swallowing, all because they want to make ends meet. And for us, we are seeing that some of these mental health issues are stemming from some of these things which are happening in the workplace. Issues of non-communicable diseases, stress. You know, when you are stressed, you overeat, you eat sugar and all that. All of these are an outcome of violence and harassment in the world of work. So there are many, you can mention any. There's sexual misconduct, there's abuse, there's bullying, there's imprisonment. Yes, imprisonment. There's sex slavery, you know, and you know, when we talk about all of these things, people think that it's women who are going through this, but it's actually even men are being harassed. Okay, so there are a host of unacceptable practices which are going on currently, and even if I had to list them down, we can take the whole day. There are so many. Yeah.
So coming back to the C190, the Convention 190 that we spoke about, who is covered by this convention? Who is covered by this C190 convention?
Okay, so when ratified and domesticated into national law and practice, the convention covers almost everybody. It covers workers as defined in the national law and practice, and in this case, as defined in the Employment Code Act of 2019. However, the convention also protects interns, job seekers, people in the informal economy, people in rural areas. It also safeguards employers, because there are some times that employers are actually victims of gender-based violence. So the convention safeguards the workplace from all forms of gender-based violence by instituting mechanisms, okay, mechanisms which protect itself and also outsiders from being susceptible to cases of gender-based violence. So the coverage of C190 is like everyone is covered. Almost everyone is covered.
When we talk about workplace, do we just mean at the office? Do we also, what about the domestic workers? What about people working in the markets? What about people working in the industry, in the factories? What is implied when we say workplace, when we say harassment and violence at the workplace? What is this place that we're talking about?
In the world of work. So the workplace has now evolved because, like I said, the workplace can be any place or any space where goods or services are being produced. So sometimes it's just not in an office. These things can even be done in the market. Okay, you have women who are selling tomatoes; those are goods. Okay, you have the taxi drivers; those are services. So the world of work is now any place or any space where there's productivity. It's no longer the office. Okay, even those guys who are getting fish in the rivers there, that is the workplace, because they are doing their business in a certain location. So wherever there's productivity, we would love to call that place a workplace. And that place has to be safe. It has to be made safe. And C190 is able to do that, because when you look at our current gender legal framework, when it comes to cases of sexual nature, none, I think, if at all, any have been persecuted in the courts because of the sensitive nature that they have. For instance, issues of sexual harassment. If my boss chooses to touch me in a certain space or a place, he chooses to touch my breast, and we're just the two of us, I have to prove. And I think our current law says he who alleges must prove. So how am I going to prove that my boss touched me without evidence? You see, it will just be my word against his. So when you look at C-190, and this is one of the beautiful, beautiful articles of C-190, is that it does shift the burden of proof from the victim to the perpetrator. Because once Zambia ratifies and domesticates C-190 according to national law and practice, it will mean that each and every case in the workplace is handled by a legal person. We will see that these cases which are being mishandled every day, and you see these women or these men being victimized, they even leave work, they are fired, they lose an income. These cases are going to end because there are going to be systems, reporting mechanisms which are going to be put in place, and they'll be handled by competent people. The other good thing about C-190 is that there are going to be issues of compensation, because remember, these cases will be handled through the courts of law, through arbitration. So issues of compensation. The worker will be protected. Yeah, and the worker will also be given psychosocial counseling, because we have seen how many of these victims of sexual harassment or any type of harassment have even resorted to suicide. I think there was a case in South Africa, I think some 2 years ago, whereby a guy went to kill himself at Parliament, and he says he had been going through a hard time at the workplace. That is violence and harassment. Okay. So even the issue of sexual harassment, I've seen people laughing at this issue. They're even saying, no, the women want, but they do not know that sexual harassment is killing productivity, is actually restructuring that institution based on a relationship between a boss and a subordinate. So that boss will no longer make decisions based on the organization objectives. He or she will make decision based on that relationship that he has with a subordinate. So you can imagine that destroys the very structure of institutions. You've seen organizations go down because of gender-based violence. And you find people laughing. You're laughing at issues of sexual harassment. You even turn your head away. When this eventually, those relationships are going to kill that organization, we even see it shut down. So these are the things that we don't want to see in the world of work. We want productivity. We want people to get an income. So those people, the workers, are not going to do that if there are those vices in the world of work. So issues of sexual harassment, bullying, they don't deserve to be anywhere in the workplace. So it's not even a laughing matter, really.
So before I get to the second question, I want to see if I can get one or two questions from our people, our viewers, and then I get to continue with my questioning. So Kelly's Mushota says, union can institutionalize concepts that prevent harassment and violence in the world of work. Employers should also have violence and harassment policies in workplaces. That's what Mr. Mushota says. This one actually is. Yes, you can. Ahmed says, okay, there's nothing new about people in high positions taking advantage of women, hence the need to educate and implementation of strict laws.
Precisely. So you see, I was talking about a system being put in place, reporting mechanisms being put in place. So the workplace has to be regulated by policy. okay? Because it is only through these policies that you will be able to systematically handle cases of gender-based violence, not from your own perspective. Because you see, I think there was somebody who I saw a comment saying, "Is our sisters wearing short dresses?" So imagine if that person is an HR and somebody is abused in the workplace, a sister, a mother, a daughter, even a son, and then you go to that person and you say, "Look, the HR, this is what has happened to me," and there are no set guidelines. And this person handles this case according to his or her own perception. Can you imagine how devastated that victim is going to be? So we don't want people handling these cases according to their own thinking. Okay? We want the workplace to be safeguarded by policies which have proper reporting mechanisms. And one thing that we are encouraging, we really do not want the human resource practitioners to be getting anywhere near or handling these cases of gender-based violence in the world of work. We are proposing that ad hoc committees be set up, and these ad hoc committees tackle these cases of gender-based violence within the prescribed timeline in their policies. So it is true, Mr. Mshota is very right, that without policies, without worker education, then we will not be able to handle cases of gender-based violence. You know, one thing that is killing the workplace is that we do not have proper worker education. We do not have awareness programs to make our people know what or the types of gender-based violence. So we need capacity building, we need to raise awareness. You know, wherever there's lack of information, then there's discrimination. People are going to take advantage because you don't know what your rights are as a worker. So they'll do whatever they want. So wherever there's a union, they must make sure that you are given the enough information about your workplace, your conditions of service, and your rights. And also, they must make sure that there are proper policies which are put in place to protect you as a worker. And to also just the institution must protect itself from cases of gender-based violence. So policies are very true. And I think Ahmad did mention that, yes, these things have been happening for a long time. It is true, because the workplace is not regulated by policies which are worker-friendly. You know, I've seen a lot of organizations come up with policies without consulting the end user. Now, I'm not a policy specialist, but I know that every time you come up with a policy, you need to consult. And the content, the context of those policies must tap into what works for you as an organization. So many times you find that people are coming up with policies without full consultation of the workers. So these policies are usually management friendly. And this is what we don't want. We want policies which are formulated with the decent work agenda at the heart of these policies. Yeah.
Bridget Kayunga says violence and harassment can be eradicated through C190. Why do you think it has taken long? Even if systems are in place, who can bite the finger that feeds them? I think the union can only do so little if it's the big bosses involved. Is this something that you can respond to?
Yes, precisely. Look, when you look at the Industrial Labor and Relations Act, when you are doing collective bargaining, there's nobody who's superior to the other. You are doing collective bargaining as equals, because a workplace cannot exist without workers. So you are doing collective bargaining as equals. So there are some unions which have put a zero tolerance in their collective bargaining agreement, and even in their policies of sexual harassment, they are there. Now, you know, sometimes we need to understand that us as trade unions have a mandate to protect the interest, to protect the rights of our members in the workplace. And I'll tell you that a union is the only entity which is given the mandate through the law to look after workers' rights. You've noticed that if people are not under the umbrella of the trade union and they do one or two things, they are fired. But if you belong to a union, then you are given maximum protection. So I'll go back to what I was saying. As unions, we need to do due diligence to protecting our members. And I'll tell you that as ZCTU, we have redefined gender equality as a membership issue. Gender equality for us is not a women's issue, it's not a man's issue, it's a membership issue. So when you belong to a trade union, whether you are a man, whether you're a woman, we are going to look at your intersectional needs. Because it's not about issues of bread and butter anymore. We want to make sure that each and every dimension which makes you tick as a human being is taken care of. And issues of harassment, issues of non-communicable diseases, anything that will make you relevant, anything that is going to make you more productive is our business as trade unions. So we need to do a lot of worker education. We need to come up with good policies which are actually going to which are going to regulate the world of work. So I would say that if there are people out there who have policies which are not working out for them, they can get in touch with us and we can get in touch with the unions, because ZCTU is a consortium of unions. So if there are unions which are not coming up with pro-worker policies, then give us a call so that we get back to them and see how we can move forward. You know, there's a new law, the Employment Code Act of 2019. It's a very, very good law. It's very progressive. So the law does protect workers. And you look at the Employment Code Act, it says that all those workers who are covered under collective bargaining, they should get better conditions of service than the minimum, which is prescribed in the Employment Code Act. So in this case, I would say that there should be a demand side, you know, and this demand side can only be met through knowing what your rights are. You know, we are not reading. We are not reading. Some of us are in workplaces, we don't even know what the conditions of service are. The only thing we are looking out for is what the money that we are going to get. It's only when we're in problems that we revisit our contract. So I would suggest that the best thing to do is get to know what the law says. Get to know what the mandate of the union is. Go to the union office and talk to them. Yeah. So it's very possible to have very good, very, very good laws in the way, policies in the workplace. All we need to do is work together.
I have this one coming from Misozi Tembo. Misozi Tembo says, companies and organizations need to allow for open discussions on harassment and violence and allow staff to come up with independent committees led by workers to address these challenges with fairness, confidentiality, while protecting the victim. Any reaction to that?
Yes, this is a very good question. So I'll tell you one thing. When you look at the Anti-GBV Act, it says that when handling issues of sexual harassment nature, you need to go through first the internal processes. So what are the internal processes in this regard? We're talking about workplace policies. So imagine you don't have anything. What happens to you? What happens to you? So it's very important, like she has said, that the trade unions come up with policies together with the employers through collective bargaining, policies which are going to work. And I'll tell you that when you look at the Employment Code Act, I think that is Section 95, the Act does compel the employers to come up with health and wellness policies. Now, when you look at the definition of health and wellness, according to the World Health Organization, it's not just talking about an absence of disease. It's talking about so many dimensions which make a human being well, like the economy, social issues, mental health issues. So the Employment Code Act is now in force, and it's very clear that policies which touch on your wellness and your health have to be formulated in the workplace. We're not only talking about issues of HIV and AIDS policy. There are new emerging issues now, Pilato. We have got issues of non-communicable diseases, the diabetes, the prostate cancer, the cervical cancer. All of those touch on the productivity of a worker. So we need to understand what wellness and health is and come up with policies which are going to be beneficial to the workers, not only policies at HIV, ndachinja vintu. Let's come up with policies which are going to, safeguard the worker in all dimensions. If it's economic, if it's social, then now you're going to have a workplace which is protected. Yeah.
Kedrick Mwamba says, I think the government and NGOs should do more work this issue, and sometimes should do more work on this issue, and sometimes it is the victim's fault, and make up stories while it was an agreement. So I don't know if you've gotten what Kedrick is saying. So Kedrick is saying the government and NGOs should do more work on this issue, and sometimes it's the victim's fault who make up stories while they had an agreement.
Okay. So, like I was saying, we need to do due diligence to this issue of gender, because most of the time we look at gender based on our social norms, our perspective from society. So I want to tell our brother one thing, that a victim is a victim, and nobody makes up stories here. And it's just the society which has left so many people down. It has let us down. And unfortunately, what he's talking about, that perception that he has, that is a perception that most of these people have in the workplace. When you are abused, you asked for it. So, Convention 190 seeks to safeguard the worker. And, I always tell the trade unions that, you see, trade unions are not a moral institution. We're not a church. For us, we are supposed to look after workers' rights. And every time a worker works in an institution, we need to have set guidelines. We need to have policies which protect that worker regardless of what they do. So in this case, don't blame the victim, blame your systems. If your systems are porous, if your systems are based on your own perceptions, somebody gets abused and then you want to blame that person. And I'll tell you that we've done a lot of research on this. Some of this consent, this same so-called consent, which is being given in the workplace, it is given under duress. If somebody accepts you to be a girlfriend at the workplace, look at the circumstances, look at the environment that this consent has been given. We have a lot of poverty in Zambia. We have a lot of young girls, a lot of graduates seeking jobs. And I'll tell you that some of these girls or boys, the interview room is in a lodge or in an office after hours because they want to make a living. So let's not blame the people who are working in our institutions. Let us blame ourselves as organizations, because we have failed to fireproof our institutions against, just for them to be susceptible to a boss going out with a worker and, doing all these things. Because remember, I said sexual harassment destroys organizations. So even if you're saying that your sister, she's dressing badly, that type of behavior and her going out with a boss will cost you your job. Okay, it will cost you your job. So it's nothing to laugh about, really. We must make sure that we protect the workplace. So we need policies which are good. We need worker education. We must make sure that the workers, everybody who's coming into the offices to work, is made aware that these are the policies, and also these are the consequences. If you do this to somebody, you are getting fired. So let's not blame the victims here. Let us blame our organizations. We have failed to actually give full coverage of protection to our people. So I really don't accept to say the victims makes up stories. You can never make up a story in that case. Yeah.
Richard Mwamba says, Comrade Naomi Kenton Kimbala is on point. We need to have policies to specifically protect a worker against sexual harassment at workplaces. There is a need to ratify Convention 1 C190 International Labour Organization 190, which is the C190.
Mm-hmm.
Harassment is at a peak. Both men and women are victims of the same, though men don't report what they go through. Let me get another one. This other one is coming from Dali Sokasonde. Dali Sokasonde says, is there a petition that can be signed to support the ratification of C190?
Actually, there's an online petition, which is, I think it is under, I think when you can look at it on Facebook, it's Zambia Ratify C190, and there is an active petition that you can sign. And you know what we are asking for as trade unions, this issue of violence and harassment is going to destroy the future of work. It has already destroyed the way we look at work. It's going to destroy the future of work for our children. So we need to make sure that we make our voices louder by joining hands. C190 is just not only a workplace issue. I know that it also touches on issues of domestic violence, because we understand that domestic violence has got a way of seeping its way back into the workplace. So you can imagine 360 coverage of protection of the worker from not only issues of workplace violence, but also issues of domestic violence. So all we need is a louder voice. All we need is to hold hands and make sure that we advocate that C190 is ratified by the government. We have countries which have already ratified C190. We have Namibia, our country, our next door neighbor here, has ratified C190. So it's not something very big. It's something which is attainable, but we need to speak together on issues of C190, because C190 can redefine the workplace as we see it and make it more decent, make it more dignified, and also make it more productive.
I'd like to understand, what does an inclusive, integrated, and gender responsive approach mean or involve?
Okay, that's a good. Yeah, so remember that in my preamble, I did mention that gender equality is not only a women's issue, it's everybody's issue. So when we say gender responsive, we are talking about policies, guidelines, systems which tap on intersectional needs of both men and women. In this case, we also want to look at what are the interests, what conditions of service can make a man more productive, both not only in the workplace but also in society. And also you also look at it from a female perspective. So we are looking at both men and women being more productive using the gender mainstreaming tool. Okay? So we want to use gender mainstreaming as a tool which is going to encourage gender responsive and integrated policies.
I want to find out from you something that is probably not as common as many other stuff. What is third-party violence, and how does the convention C190 address this issue?
Yeah, so remember when you had asked me the coverage of C190, I did talk about job seekers. We talked also about suppliers. I think you've seen these people who are supplying our organizations with goods or services or repairs. Sometimes they are so vulnerable to gender-based violence. I think you've seen that in some institutions, only the female suppliers will get the contracts. Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. So these are the third-party people we're talking about. Now, C190 wants to protect them, and it wants to protect the workplace by coming up with certain mechanisms which are sometimes going to decentralize the purchasing system. So the third party are the people who are not really connected to the workplace through a payroll, but maybe they are giving us goods or services. Yeah, these are the third party.
And how does the convention, the C190, cover such victims?
Yeah, it covers them because first of all, it's going to, like I said, it's all about safeguarding the workplace. So if C190 is ratified, domesticated into national law and practice, the workplaces will be compelled to come up with systems that protect these people. All right. I remember a long time ago, if I'm allowed to give an example, a long time ago, we would write letters to the HR, remember, and would take the letters to the HR by hand, and the HR would vet these applications and choose who he wants. But now, when you look at the UN system, it's a system, it's a machine which does this. You apply, and then after you apply, a team is going to select the candidates that it wants to interview. So this is the way we would want to protect our third parties. We want to come up with a system that does not directly connect them to the people who are in charge of purchasing, but it should be done through a system.
I'm interested in the C190.
Yeah.
So first of all, let me get this question addressed. This one is coming from George Muninda, who is asking, what is making government hesitate to ratify the C190 in your view?
Okay, government hasn't hesitated. You remember that we were almost at the peak of getting this convention ratified, but we have changed governments, in the last year. So what we are trying to do now is to reconnect with the new parliamentarians, with the new ministers. I think we also need to make sure that we build their knowledge base on what C190 is. I think the government is willing, but we have to just go through the ratification process. You can't just ratify automatically. There are certain steps that you need to go through. But just to give them a nudge, just to give them a push, let us, just make our voices louder so that the ratification process speeds up. Yeah.
What's under the same C190? Are there specific responsibilities that are expected of the employers?
Yes. Thank you so much for this question. And I know I want to make a very funny example that I use most of the time when us women are trying to get a man to tell us what kind of a relationship they have. Most of the time the girls will be saying, "Are you my boyfriend? Are you what?" And the man will be saying, "No, since we're together, we're together." So you see, when you fail to define, when you fail to define anything, then it doesn't exist. Yeah. So the first responsibility of an employer is to define what violence and harassment is in the workplace policies. Because when you define, you give it form and you make it legitimate. So first of all, for you to prevent violence and harassment, you need to define it. You need to talk about it. You need to name it so that you don't even ask what is it. You know it because it's in white and black. So first of all, you define it. When you define it, it's also a way of preventing, because once it's there, people are going to know what it's about. The other responsibility is education and training. You have defined it. The next step is to now make people know what it is. What is harassment? What are the types of harassment in the workplace so that people get to know? We also don't want to just talk about workplace issues because remember, I did mention that the trade union has to be relevant to its members, not only in the world of work, but also back home in the community. So when we give them the training, we make them know what GBV is and where they can get remedy for some of these issues if they had to come up. And look, the workplace has to do its work, but there are certain issues like sexual assault that have to be handled by the police. So yeah, so you educate, and then finally you come up with remedies. You've seen a lot of people being disgruntled and unhappy about issues of workplace violence because the perpetrators have not met the consequences. Nothing has happened to them. In fact, they're even given names. I think you've heard some of these guys in the workplaces whereby even with interns, when interns come, they will just say, John, have you seen them? Have you seen? Yeah. So we need to see these people persecuted. We need to see these people, get punished for this action. So that is the That is what the employer should be doing through policy. Yeah, prevention through definition, worker education, and also remedy through policy formulation.
What should one do in the event that they find themselves harassed or victim of violence in the workplace? What would you say they need to do in that moment?
It actually saddens me even just to answer this question right now, because at the moment as we speak, not many institutions have got proper policies put in place. So you can find that even when you have been harassed, where do you go? Because each and every policy has to have reporting mechanisms. And these reporting mechanisms have to be done in a very quick and steady manner. And we need to have, there need to be, there has to be secrecy. People need to be confidential in handling these cases. Unfortunately, currently, we do not have many institutions which have policies with clear guidelines on reporting. So it's something that we are trying to work on. I think the unions are really doing what they can. And this is something that ZCTU wants to help organizations, because we are mandated actually by law to come up with worker-friendly policies. So at the moment, the only thing I can say is that we need more policies which are going to protect the workers, and these policies must have reporting mechanisms. And these reporting mechanisms should not be directly linked to management. We don't really, like I said, we don't want the HR practitioners, because sometimes they are part of management, and they do answer to management. So they have a conflict of interest in handling these cases. We want ad hoc committees, not permanent committees. We want ad hoc committees which are constituted through policy action to handle issues of violence and harassment. Not only sexual misconduct, like I said, any type of harassment, they need to be handled through a committee.
Ahmed asks again, have you carried out a survey on how many workers even know about C190?
That's a very good question, Ahmed. And before we can come up with programming for any action that we want to do, we need to first of all do research. And unfortunately, we are still trying to come up with because it will take a lot of money. We need to do a research. We want to do a cross-sectional study on the prevalence of sexual harassment in the world of work. And we want to sample organizations which are dominated by male. And then we also want to sample institutions which are dominated by females, and then also sample institutions which are dominated by both male and females, because we need to understand the type of violence and harassment which is happening in there. And then when we do that survey, and then I think we can even come up with proper programming. Even when we go to the parliamentarians, we give them figures to say, this is what is actually happening in the world of work. I think that with evidence-based advocacy, we would see a very speedy ratification of C190. So this is something that we are currently working on. We want to do a cross-sectional study.
Thank you very much.
The prevalence. Yeah.
We're getting towards the end. I think we have a minute or so. I would like to understand what is the ZCTU doing for people and with people that are not part of the union. So, for example, the barber man, this guy that's working in a barber shop. What's ZCTU doing to protect this worker who is providing a service and they're not part of a member of any union body in the country?
Okay, so when you look at the mandate or definition of a trade union, it's very clear that a trade union is an entity which looks after workers' rights, and those members or workers must be affiliated to a trade union through subscription. And that is what the Industrial Labor and Relations Act says. So our hands are a bit tied on that one. We do not have the jurisdiction to look after members who are not, workers who are not our members. However, we have associates or groupings which look after this type of workers, and these associations are affiliated to us, and they do sit in our meetings, and they do get they get updated on the current labor issues. And again, when you look at the current law, the Employment Code Act, it does protect all of those people that we have talked about. And we have a very, very good labor inspectorate, an active group at the Ministry of Labor. So we do have sometimes instances that when people come to our offices to say, I'm a Baba man, I was abused, I've worked 3 years, I've worked 3 months without getting my pay. We do connect them to people at the Ministry of Labor. And I don't think there's ever been a case that has been referred to the Ministry of Labor and it has not been handled adequately. So a trade union, like I said, has its own tenants. So there's nothing that we can do about that unless we change the law.
Okay, so final question. My final question. What can we do to make sure that C190 is ratified and implemented in Zambia? What is our call to action? What would you like the people to do to ensure that C190 is ratified in Zambia and it's implemented?
You can hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay, so the first step is you inviting us to such big platforms. That is the first step, and I just want to say thank you to you, because when you give us a space to speak on platforms like this, we sort of like get a louder voice in advocacy. So you have given us the platform. There are people who have heard, and there are people who would want to join our campaign, and they are free to come to our offices, to come to my office, and then we will do that. I think what we really need is just a united front. We need solidarity. What we need is solidarity. A quick one. There was a time some bankers, they were going through some hard times, and the other workers went and they demonstrated whilst the bankers were actually working. Okay, so what we need is solidarity. An injury to one is actually an injury to all. So issues of violence and harassment, they touch on everybody's life. Every well-meaning Zambian is affected. So what we need is just a closer collaboration. We need a united front. We need to, advocate as a united front that, the government ratifies. So if you can call us on such platforms, it would really do a lot of good for the ratification process, to speed it up.
Thank you very much, Madam Naomi. So I promise that tomorrow morning I'll share the link to the petition on this platform, and then allow as many people as possible to sign and make sure that the petition is signed. Thank you very much for joining us for this conversation, and I'm sure I will host you some more so we can get a clear understanding of how we are progressing on the C190 ratification, but also on the issues of gender and relations in the workplaces. Thank you very much, and have a great evening.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sure, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mwewa Chilatamba Bonse, Sancho Bane. So tomorrow morning, I'll post the link to the petition, and I invite you to sign it, so then we can demand from government that government ratifies this important instrument that will bring about safety and dignity to those that are working within the borders of Zambia. Thank you very, very, very much.